Good morning, guys. It's Miss Seifert. I am out today. My daughter is still sick. Want to go over with you a couple quick things before you get started. Today, you're obviously going to watch this video. There's a quick video on mass movement that will also be on the screen. You need to complete section 5 in your packet today during class. And then you're also going to complete section 6 for homework. You can get it done in class today if you use your time wisely. And I'm not going to be here after school. Hopefully I will be back tomorrow, and anyone who needs to stay after, there's an activity bus at 4:30. So erosion and deposition is the section 5. Landforms are always changing on Earth, we know that. And so the things that weather rock, erode it, pick it up and move it somewhere else, and then deposit it, leaving it somewhere else, are going to be gravity, running water, glaciers, wind, and waves. So mass movement is when you get a large amount of sediment that moves in a downhill fashion. It's due to gravity, usually has some complicating factors. Landslides, mudslides, slump, and creep. Landslides, rock and soil move quickly down that steep slope because of gravity. In a mud flow, obviously it has mud in the name of it, you've got water that's involved, the ground becomes saturated, it slides down the hill. This usually occurs after heavy rains and is going to be affected by the topography, again, how steep those slopes are. Slump is when this also moves down the hill, but when it does so, it moves down the hill in chunks, and you're going to see that in the video. And then creep is just very slow erosion of a hillside. And what happens in that case is you see fences and poles and things start to tilt over time. This is very, very slow, usually done through rainwater, just taking little particles of dirt downhill. So I'll have the video up on the screen. There are some really epic videos of mudslides out there for you to watch. Water erosion, again, depends on the amount of rain that we get, what type of vegetation is on the surface, the type of soil, the shape of the land, and how people use the land. So we've talked about the Dust Bowl. Dust Bowl was created by mismanagement of land on our part, which easily was weathered and eroded and deposited elsewhere. So, runoff channels. Rills are tiny grooves in the soil. A gully is a large groove or channel that carries water after a rainstorm. Now, there's a gully all the way around the soccer field. When I was leaving school yesterday, there was water in it because of all the rain. A stream is a channel that almost always has water in it. In this area, we tend to call those creeks, but it can be called a stream or a creek. It just depends on where you are. River is basically just a large stream. And in some areas, you have things called rivers. They're about the same size that we call Blackwater Creek. So those are used kind of interchangeably, just with larger ones being called rivers. And then tributaries, obviously any stream or river that flows into a larger river or body of water. It contributes its water to that larger stream. Waterfalls, when softer rock is eroded away, you get those big drops. Floodplain is that flat, wide area of land along a river. It could be covered when the river floods. And a meander is when a river wanders. These are really cool. I'll try to pull those for you to see. An oxbow lake is a meander that's been cut off from a primary river. So rivers that are kind of flat and in soft soil end up curving back and forth, and these curves are called meanders, and to meander means to wander. So we've got some really cool pictures. This is one in Africa. These are actually very, very common in Namibia because you have relatively flat land and a lot of topsoil that has evolved over years. It's just developed forever. So you end up with these big, huge loops, and in a flood situation, one of those loops could get cut off. Okay, another picture from the air of rivers in Namibia, and what these are called are those oxbow lakes. They're no longer connected to the main river. Over time, some of those may dry up, but then again, as the river continues wandering, it may just create new loops. So, alluvial fan is where you get a big sloping deposit of sediment. Usually this happens at the base of a mountain after a rainstorm. Deltas are when land builds up because it's been carried down a river and then deposited there, and then you get very fertile river valleys. So alluvial fan, it's kind of hard to see. This is a mountainside And yeah, that's my cat. When the river brings soil and sediment down that hillside, you end up with a deposit of mud at the bottom. The Delta, Mississippi River Delta, is probably the best known, and the Mississippi River Delta is basically just all the sediments that the Mississippi River has brought down towards Louisiana and deposited near the mouth of the river at the Gulf of Mexico. And this has slowly over years built up, and so when they refer to the Mississippi River Delta, or you hear them talk about living on the Delta, that's what they're talking about. The Nile River floodplain. Now, I love this because you can see that the Nile River flows through desert. However, that river floods regularly, and when it floods, which is like an annual basis or semi-annual basis, like once or twice a year, it brings up all sorts of sediment and fish poop and all kinds of really good humus, which builds up on the sides of the river. So people have always been able to live alongside the Nile so long as they were growing things on the floodplain. So I think that picture is really stark. Our floodplain downtown, you can see there's a flat area where the river floods, but this one is really important. Groundwater dissolves minerals in the rocks. We talked about karst topography, K-A-R-S-T, and it creates these caverns. So I'm going to show you guys a quick visualization of that. This is a visualization where you've got limestone as the base, and water, obviously, that gets down in there. Groundwater dissolves caves in there. And then as the land itself is lifted through plate tectonics, a lot of times that water drains and you end up with these caves. Now, the mineral deposits at the top of the cave are called stalactites, and they hang tight to the ceiling. The ones that build up on the ground are stalagmites. They're mounds of minerals. So I thought that's a really good visualization. And this is what we call karst topography. Over time, in some areas like in Florida, those caverns, the roof of them actually will collapse, and in doing so you end up with a sinkhole. And that's not a good thing. So, wind erosion will do one of two things. It either picks up the sand and moves it, so you end up with just rocks left. This is what's happened to a desert over years, where the sand has gotten moved and you end up with just rocks. And this is called desert pavement. The other one is abrasion, where the sand is picked up and it runs into other rocks. And when it does that, it carves away the side of the rock. That rock is now called a ventifact, and you can tell which way the wind was blowing because it blew towards this side and it carved that away. Winds also move sand dunes, so it just moves the sand this way and the sand slips down the leeward slope. Windward slope is the direction that it's blowing into. Leeward slope is where it slips down. Okay, and probably won't see this, but it is large plains of sand that are far away from where they came from. Wave erosion, you know how waves work. Through longshore drift and riptide, they form different things. This is a spit, which over time deposits sand all down in this long strip along the beach. A wave-cut cliff. Oh gosh, I wanted that one. A sea cave. When you've got a soft area of cliffside, sometimes the waves will wear that away and you end up with a cave. Sometimes when you've got a sea cave, it ends up going all the way through. You get what's called a sea arch. And if that sea arch collapses over time because of gravity or further wave action, you end up with what's called a sea stack, where it's just this pillar that is left. Okay, so glaciers are formed by snow. They build up over time. You end up with these big chunks of ice, of snow that's basically been packed down for 20, 30, 40 years, and they cut these really cool U-shaped valleys. You can see these U valleys. Instead of having a V like the Grand Canyon, they're definitely a U from where a glacier moved through them. So, let's see, they can also pick up rocks and move them, and they also scrape the ground as they move. So you end up with these rocks that are left when a glacier melts. Okay, and you also get a till. It's kind of like if you were playing in the sandbox and you took your little toy and ran it through the sand and you ended up with a ridge on either side, okay, this is what's called a moraine, and that is leftover sediment that's been pushed downhill by a glacier. So it pushes up on either side and also towards the end. All right. So today I need you working on again. We're going to finish. You're going to do section 5, and I want you to do section 6 for homework. Section 6 is not terribly long, so you can probably get it done today, and maybe in class. And I won't be here after school, but I hope to see you guys tomorrow. Thanks so much.